Welcome to my presentation of the impact of drought on the collapse of the Mayan civilization. So who were the Mayans? Well, the Mayans developed forms of math, a calendar, and architecture. They had advanced reservoirs and quarries and some caves that they had filled with water. They had a peak population of 13 million people during their classic period. But they suddenly collapsed, and no one really knows why. Why would such an advanced civilization just collapse out of nowhere? Research has suggested that the collapse had occurred in 3 stages. The green first, this purple second, and the red down here. It's a strange sort of coincidence that it happens in 3 different phases and not all at once, and it's also opposite to how conquistadors had first landed in Mexico. So what did cause this collapse? Was it war amongst the Mayan people themselves? Was it European conquistadors coming to the new land? Or, as I will say in my presentation, was it caused by an onset of drought and climate change? Recent studies point to a drought having caused the collapse of the Mayan civilization. Significant prolonged periods of drought during the time of the Mayan collapse have been studied and researched by several different scientists, but I'm going to focus in on 4 main research topics. In 1995, some core samples were drilled in a lake to see if they can extract any paleoclimate records. A stalagmite sample was taken in 2012 to also find paleoclimate records. In 2018, they did a modeling of the core to see if they could actually find the precipitation amounts. And in 2005, the impacts of drought were measured in other countries, such as Venezuela. The first research project that was done was core drilling in Lake Chichancanab, and that's in the center of the Yucatan Peninsula. And it was first drilled in 1995 as part of a research exploration to extract a core sample that they could use to find oxygen isotopes and create a paleoclimate record during the time period. They drilled an 8,000-foot core down and were able to extract data all the way back to 8,000 years ago, which included the collapse of the Mayans between 700 and 1000 AD. They theorized that the presence of oxygen isotopes in gypsum would link times of drought, since the gypsum is a precipitate within the lake would show dry periods of the lake bed. This research team found that oxygen isotopes did increase in the time of Mayan collapse from 800 to 1000 AD. They also found that it was the hottest and driest period for the duration of the core, which was approximately 8,000 years. They also theorized and found some fires in Costa Rica and some other lakes in central Mexico that also showed drought during that time and onsets of the oxygen isotope in the gypsum precipitate. Here's the chart of the core and their findings. The depth is on the right, and at the top it has the calcium carbonate and oxygen isotope levels. And you can see from 1000 to about 800 the oxygen isotope increases. In 2018, they revisited the core and decided to do some new modeling. They were using new modeling and new technology in hopes that they could find times of low precipitation. They thought that lower rain resulted in damage to crops and crop rotation of the Mayan civilization. After completing the new model, they found that Mayans were indeed plagued by the lack of rain and flash drought, and that this did affect the crop rotation in the agricultural people. Drought decreased the precipitation of the area by nearly 70%, and humidity also decreased during the time period. Here's the chart that they put together. There are, I'd say, 4 main events of lack of precipitation here, and those coincide with lack of humidity as well. So not only is there no precipitation, but there's also low humidity. And there's also the increase in the oxygen isotope and an increase in the density of the gypsum. In 2012, a stalagmite was taken from a cave and was also used to test for oxygen isotopes related to drought. These scientists wanted to study to find the most severe droughts, but they also wanted to find either a correlation or debunk the previous thought of the core sample showing that drought onset was in the Yucatan Peninsula during the time of the Mayan collapse. So after the stalagmite was studied, they found that 2 major drought periods existed, one from 770 to 870 and another from 920 to 1100 AD. They also theorized that El Nino brought the warmer and drier conditions from the west and affected the summer monsoon season, which the Mayans had grown accustomed to, especially within their crop rotation and crop production. These scientists also found that the drought affected the highlands before the lowlands. Thus, in the summertime, rainwater did not come from the highlands, which the Mayans had previously counted on. And in the lowlands, lack of precipitation affected their crop rotation and crop schedule. This hit as a sort of double whammy for the Mayan people, as they didn't get the runoff water for drinking, and they also didn't get rain for their food production. Here's the chart that they had created. And in the time of the Mayan collapse, from 800 to 1100, is a severe decline in rainfall. And in 2005, there was another scientist team that took a core in Venezuela to further find the expansion of the drought in the area. They decided to use a heavy metal method and correlated the precipitation to the amount of runoff and erosion in the highlands. The higher the amount of precipitation, the higher the amount of erosion, the higher the amount of heavy metals in the core sample. They were able to find a core that had increasing titanium from the time to 200 and 1000 AD. However, it had dry times to be found from 760 to 910, which further corresponded with the data other scientists had collected and the collapse of the Mayan civilization. Here's the chart that they had put together, including the drastic declines in titanium and thus rain during the periods and the Mayan collapse. So in conclusion, the Mayan collapse may not have been caused by drought and flash drought, however, it was a crippling factor. The onset of drought in the highlands acted first and was a double whammy for the people, depleting drinking water and also hurting their crops and agriculture rotation. Severe droughts caused by El Nino hurt the monsoon season and depleted their reservoirs designed by the advanced engineers of the ancient Mayan world. Thank you.